November 17, 1986. Japan Airlines Flight 1628, a Boeing 747-200 cargo flight, was cruising at 35,000 feet over northeastern Alaska en route from Paris to Tokyo. Captain Kenju Terauchi, an experienced pilot with over 10,000 flight hours and more than 29 years with JAL, was at the controls, accompanied by First Officer Takanori Fuji and Flight Engineer Yoshio Tsukuda. The flight had been routine until approximately 6:19 p.m. local time, when the crew noticed unusual lights ahead in the dark Arctic sky. At first, they assumed the lights were military aircraft, common in the region. But as the lights grew closer, the crew realized they were seeing something extraordinary. Suddenly, two objects appeared directly in front of the aircraft. Captain Terauchi later described them as small ships about the size of a DC-8 jet, emitting intense bright lights in rapid, patterned sequences, like flames coming out of multiple exhausts. The lights changed color from white to amber to green, pulsing in synchronized patterns. The two objects positioned themselves immediately ahead of the 747, pacing the aircraft at the same speed for several minutes. The crew felt heat on their faces despite being inside the pressurized cockpit. The objects maneuvered erratically, stopping abruptly, then accelerating instantly, performing sharp turns that no conventional aircraft could execute. Then, without warning, the two smaller objects vanished. In their place appeared a third, much larger object, described by the crew as enormous, twice the size of an aircraft carrier. It was walnut-shaped, with a dark central band and arrays of glowing panels or nozzles emitting brilliant light. This giant craft positioned itself alongside the 747, close enough that the crew could see detailed structure. Terauchi reported the interior of the cockpit became brightly illuminated, as if it were daylight. The object maintained perfect formation with the Boeing for nearly 50 minutes, following every turn the pilots made in an attempt to evade it. Ground radar stations confirmed the presence of unknown targets. The Federal Aviation Administration's Anchorage Air Route Traffic Control Center detected a primary radar return near the JAL flight. Military radar at Elmendorf Air Force Base also tracked an unidentified target shadowing the aircraft. Controllers asked Terauchi if he wanted military interception. He declined, concerned it might provoke a reaction. Instead, the crew requested descent to lower altitude in hopes of losing the object, but followed them down. The encounter lasted over 50 minutes and covered hundreds of miles across Alaskan airspace before the giant craft finally accelerated away at incredible speed and disappeared. The encounter did not end with the crew's observations alone. Multiple ground-based radar systems corroborated the presence of unidentified targets. The FAA's Anchorage Air Route Traffic Control Center detected a primary radar return, a strong unidentified echo, near JL Flight 1628. Radar tapes later analyzed showed the target maintaining close proximity to the aircraft for extended periods. Military radars at Elmendorf Regional Operational Control Center and Tin City Long Range Radar Site also tracked the unknown object. Controllers confirmed a surge primary return, shadowing the 747, appearing and disappearing in coordination with the crew's reports. FAA radar specialist John Callahan later revealed that the data was captured on both digital and analog systems. When the flight landed in Anchorage, FAA investigators interviewed the crew immediately. Captain Terauchi provided detailed sketches of the objects, showing the smaller ships with nozzle-like exhausts and the massive walnut-shaped craft with grid-like panels. The crew's accounts were consistent and detailed. Terauchi described the giant object as having a central darkened band, with glowing rectangular panels arranged in rows. He estimated its size by comparing it to known landmarks when it briefly positioned itself on the horizon. Despite the intensity of the encounter, the crew maintained professional composure. They continued the flight to Anchorage without incident, landing safely. Upon arrival, FAA Quality Assurance Manager John Callahan was dispatched from Washington to investigate. Callahan collected radar tapes, voice recordings, and written reports. He later stated that the data clearly showed an unidentified target maneuvering around the aircraft. When he briefed FAA Administrator Admiral Donald Engen, the information was forwarded to higher levels. According to Callahan, representatives from the CIA and FBI became involved. At a meeting in Washington, scientists from President Reagan's scientific study team reviewed the evidence. Callahan recounted being told, "This event never happened. We were never here. You're not to talk about this." The data was confiscated, and the crew instructed not to discuss the incident publicly. Japan Airlines initially grounded Captain Terauchi for speaking to the press, though he was later reinstated. The airline cited concerns over publicity, but Terauchi maintained his silence was imposed under pressure. In January 1987, Terauchi gave a detailed press conference in Japan, supported by sketches and radar data summaries released by the FAA. He described the objects as clearly mechanical, with structured surfaces and deliberate movements. The FAA's official conclusion, released in March 1987, stated that the radar returns were likely clutter or weather phenomena. However, Chief Investigator James Derry acknowledged the crew's sincerity but suggested possible misidentification of atmospheric effects. This explanation has been widely criticized. Primary radar returns, which detect physical objects rather than weather, match the crew's visual observations precisely in timing and location. Multiple independent radar sites confirmed the target, ruling out localized anomalies. The Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident remains one of the most remarkable and well-documented aerial encounters involving a commercial aircraft. What sets it apart is the combination of prolonged visual observation by a professional crew, simultaneous radar confirmation from multiple ground stations, and official investigation by the FAA, followed by an apparent effort to suppress the data. Comparisons to other cases are inevitable. The massive size and structured appearance of the giant craft echo reports from the Rendlesham Forest incident and the Phoenix Lights, where witnesses described enormous silent objects with arrays of lights. The radar jamming and evasive maneuvers resemble the tic-tac encounters from the USS Nimitz Group. Captain Terauchi maintained his account until his death in 2014. In interviews, he rejected conventional explanations, insisting the objects were clearly artificial and under intelligent control. He described feeling observed and even intimidated by the giant craft's proximity. Skeptics have proposed various theories: atmospheric plasma, temperature inversions creating radar ghosts, or misidentified Jupiter and Mars amplified by ice crystals. However, these fail to account for the structured appearance described in detail, the synchronized light patterns, the heat felt in the cockpit, or the primary radar returns from multiple sites tracking a physical object. John Callahan, the FAA investigator, went public in 2000 at a Disclosure Project press conference. He stated that the CIA's involvement and the order to erase the event convinced him the government knew these were not conventional phenomena. The incident contributed to growing pressure for transparency. Released documents via Freedom of Information Act requests include radar data summaries and crew statements, though the full raw tapes remain classified or missing. Nearly 4 decades later, The case endures as a benchmark for radar visual encounters. It involved trained aviators, independent ground confirmation, and international implications. Yet no satisfactory explanation has emerged. The event challenges the dismissal often applied to such reports. A seasoned captain risked his career to speak out. Radar operators confirmed what the crew saw. Data was collected and then allegedly buried. Whatever paced JAL Flight 1628 over Alaska in 1986 demonstrated size, maneuverability, and technology far beyond known aircraft of the era. It operated openly in controlled airspace for nearly an hour, observed by professionals and tracked by military systems. The questions persist. What was the origin of these objects? Why the apparent interest in a routine cargo flight? And why the effort to suppress one of the best documented cases in aviation history? The skies over Alaska that night hosted something extraordinary, something that moved with purpose, illuminated brilliantly, and vanished as suddenly as it appeared. And it left behind evidence that, despite official efforts, refuses to be forgotten.